As for the platform itself, I found it really useful in that it allowed me to, as a mentor, it is something which sort of gives you some instruction onto what we should be looking at, but actually allows me to mentor according to the needs of my mentee. So if that makes sense, whereas the old NQT program did not allow us to do that. It was quite prescriptive, and because this wasn't prescriptive, I found it easier to use, and actually it was easier and both relevant, I would say, relevant to what was happening in the classroom. So that we found it really positive, and that's generally been the view of all of us as sort of mentors at the school. That's quite nice.
Great.
I just sort of kind of wanted to echo that really. I find the module summary guide really, really useful as a resource to kind of whip through and make sure that I'm covering the right bits and pieces with my ECT. But I do really love the fact that it is backed up by, you know, a considerable amount of resources that I can choose from. So, I mean, to be quite honest, I base a lot of my meetings with them on the summary guide, and it's nice to always feel supported by pretty much everything as a backup. I've never yet, you know, got to a point where I thought I didn't have something at my fingertips that I might need.
Yes, so what I would do is the day before I'm having my session with the ECT, I would read through any of the material. I like that it's always got a link to the most up-to-date research. That's the bit that I like. I will then sort of note down 2 or 3 points that stuck with me in the general theme. Then when I meet with them, I'll ask them to say what did they take away from it, anything that stood out, and then we'll have a discussion about how that applies to them in school, in the real world. The only time it's ever trickier is just sort of making sure I'm just focusing on the primary element of it. Because when there's case studies and things, that I know it has to sort of encompass everyone. But yeah, so it's more a case of me making sure I can then signpost them to whatever's the most important and pertinent part to read.
I agree totally that flexibility is important. You know, even a personal event happening in an ECT's life. I've often ended up being sort of good friends with colleagues through this, and you know, you do know about those other things going on. But I've found I've sort of gone a bit of a backwards way around it. I've asked what I can help them with, what their concerns are. And then with your course, I find it quite easy to take what they're talking about and then relate it to a unit. So if I'm being honest, sometimes I jump ahead a bit. I don't know if that's good or bad, but sometimes life comes up with stuff that I can apply to your course and essentially then tick that off, you know, when these challenges arise. So again, that flexibility is there with a bit of familiarity of the course. And I'm wondering if I'm right to do that, or, you know, I'm using a bit of my own judgment with that, but it seems to work.
You've got a thumbs up from Mark there. So I think that's exactly what our intention of our program is, to really make it work for you and your ECT.